I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with Dead Ringers production designer Erin Magill. Now, going into this project, first of all, what was the kind of overall mood and impression you wanted to capture with the design for the series? Because it is kind of this very stylized, moody piece.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, we were going to be inspired by the original film, and there was going to be a bit of, homage throughout to that, which is this kind of, heightened psychological thriller horror. And so I think we wanted to, of course, pay homage to the original, but also kind of make it our own. And with obviously the brilliant adaptation and reimagining with Rachel, two female gynecologists, it was most important to me to keep that heightened sense of tense thriller horror throughout, but of course now through this feminist lens and female perspective. And so I think while we took bits of the original, it was really, there was a lot of female artists and architects and photographers and, lots of inspiration taken with that in mind to kind of make it our own.
And the Mantle Parker Center itself, as we see it in the series, is this impressive kind of imposing physical space. How and where did you create that place?
Yeah, it was, when we meet the twins, they work in what we want to say, they are the best of the best, and they're working at, say, a Mount Sinai Lenox Hill in New York, but not to say that, they're not coming from some rundown hospital, but those structures and that system that they worked in is very much of this kind of old guard and antiquated and very, probably very male designed, male oriented, a bit of a structure and maze you can get lost in. So that coming from that was a lot of the initial then idea of, what would this dream birthing center be and what is the opposite of that? And one of the initial ideas, of course, we were going to build certain aspects, but we knew we needed the grandeur, obviously, with the money they're getting as well, and for the cinematic scope and value of what this place is. And we found that that beautiful lobby that had the kind of intertwining walkways and stairwells, it was very organic, lots of woods and warm marbles that kind of felt like this much more, you could breathe and much more spacious versus the very kind of, I think, claustrophobic world of Westcott Memorial where we had just seen them. And that kind of was the beginning of this, okay, if we're there, and then we go into that very bespoke kind of birthing center that feels very, again, feminine, leaning into those curves and shapes and palette. That's, probably more of, also a little bit more of the Beverly and the way that she is. And then Elliot, the kind of other part of it, as you get more down into the bowels of this center, the research, the part where we know things start to go a little ethically blurry, that was going to let us, I think, again, lean a bit using those same kind of materials that would make sense, but kind of get in the horror and thriller aspect, go lean into that red and lean into a little starker, cooler, sharper edges materials that kind of lend themselves to where obviously Elliot's journey goes and kind of her experimentation and everything that goes with that. And we were able actually to find, again, we knew we would be building certain aspects, but I had found the TWA Convention Center, actually this newly built hospital convention center, had this great look that had a lot of the same materials we were already incorporating into the build of the apartment and the hospital. And it just felt like kind of this natural progression of the Parkers and the Mantles coming together and what kind of textures and colors associated with both of them be brought into this big, large, new, very bespoke female birthing center.
As you mentioned, the color red, is a prominent feature in that center, especially. What went into the decisions around color?
Definitely. I mean, I think obviously the red is so iconic with the first film. And so that was, of course, an early conversation of, you know, how to approach that. And when it was decided that, you know, it would really be something that they would continue, and Carrie Langerman, our brilliant costume designer, would, you know, reinterpret in this new way, you know, it was very important to me to only use red sparingly then. And when it mattered from, you know, the bones, I knew that our cinematographers were definitely going to play with red lighting, but, you know, where I would have it really built into the structure. And it really started to become something that we were going to associate more with Elliot, and kind of, I think, her much more, I'd say a little more, her more dangerous and vivacious personality, and a little more extreme and unpredictable, which I think all of those character traits really lend themselves to red. And so when that kind of started to be associated with her a little more, it's why we chose to incorporate some of it into her bedroom, versus Beverly, again, who's a bit more of this calm, cool, or at least attempts to keep her calm and cool demeanor. And, you know, red would be less associated with her and a little bit more with Elliot, from the bedroom to eventually her lab, and kind of along with the behavior that she gets involved in.
And how much did you build that was you know, especially you know, unique to you know, the production, as opposed to locations that you found?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the entire the Westcott Memorial, our Betsy Irons, I believe her name was, OBGYN wing, that was a built set. And again, the intention of that was really, we wanted to, again, technical reasons, but also really to establish this idea, I think, of a lot of the kind of patterns and shapes that are very gridded and maze and structure, that kind of is this antiquated healthcare system that is very familiar for people getting caught up in. And also with that, it was really important because in a lot of the research, you really start to realize, again, the very gendered, these wings are always so blue and pink and, you know, wallpapers for kids. And so it became this very important kind of, here's this starting ground for them to build that. And then again, to the birthing center, where again, we built the specific, the kind of delivery room and the hallways there, and the surgical rooms, and a lot of those more very special spaces, but again, working with within the restrictions of production, and wanting that grandeur of something as special as that large atrium, or some of the grandeur that we got in the convention center at TWA for the lab. So then we could go into the details of building out the specifics of their lab to the level we wanted. And then most importantly, of course, the build of their apartment, which was the definite, you know, we had a location that on the Upper West Side that we were that had, you know, for the location itself, and then the lovely lobby and this kind of iconic New York, they've reached a certain level of status, but then we would, you know, this apartment was basically emblematic of the twins and their completely codependent, dysfunctional, toxic relationship. And again, in the way that it might look beautiful and represent a certain level and, you know, talent and world that they live in, but it also, when you start to really look around, reflects a lot of, again, the unhealthy, toxic relationship that goes on between these two grown, you know, sisters, and that, you know, there's they share a bathroom, and, you know, that normally, you know, might be something that two teenage girls or sisters would do. And there's a lot of, you know, it was very important to have that kitchen and the communal space feel very sterile, because that's actually something that I think they're most comfortable in, the most like the hospital to them. And everything, you know, is very function over the form, in a way that there's this very doctor mindset. And then again, back to their bedrooms, where I think we really tried to get the most of, we tried to show the most of their personality there, because for Alice, the showrunner, and I, it was really important that the bedroom really is for each of them kind of, if they had a sanctuary or a safe space, that was it. For Beverly, it's very much this Zen space with a bit of, we were inspired by this beautiful old Art Deco bed, but we loved that the curtains felt almost hospital-like, again, in the way you could draw them, and the calm of the blue. But then again, the way we positioned and built the doors and the entries is that to the bathroom, you really could see from one bed straight through to the other twins' bedroom. And again, to kind of show this very toxic, very on top of each other relationship that existed. And then to Elliot's space, which was much more kind of, while stunning, you know, and highly designed, she really kind of makes this cave her own. And with Sean Durkin, the director of that first block, we spoke a lot about how, Elliot would have come in and threw up the TV that she's watching because, the interior designer would have had a panic attack, but, Elliot's messy. She kind of comes in like that tornado, and there's piles of her clothes and food, or, something she grabbed off the street. And that's why, again, we could get into a little bit more, I'd say, vibrant colors and textures in there. We didn't really use a lot of pattern in Beverly's calm space, but Elliot had, this great wallpaper that was inspired by Van Gogh, and kind of, and a bit of the illusions we can get there with that kind of fall. So yeah, that was, again, obviously lots of reasons to build that wonderful space.
Episode 2 takes us to a different place. The Parker home, which is an unsettling experience for the sisters and for the audience. Tell me about the location used for that and what kind of work you did in that space.
Yeah, it was really, obviously, it was a really interesting challenge because, obviously, as I just kind of said, the twins are at a certain, we meet them in their home and in their work, and they are a certain level of, status. But I think the best way to kind of differentiate is to say, they've come more from middle class and have worked their way up to, they are rich. And this Parker family this is generational, this is wealth. And how do you show that difference? Because there is a distinct difference of, these are people they really need to get some serious money from, and showing that difference, while also, I think, obviously Alice wrote just this brilliant, I mean, it's all brilliant, but a very, to me, I could read that dinner party scene forever. And just, a lot of what Alice is commenting on there, I think of that kind of very elite wealth, something that kind of, in our production search for a space, we ended up finding this kind of beautiful old home that was, in fact, had history in that we were basically leaning into something that wasn't brand new, that because they represent this generational wealth and old money, this is going to be one of 5 homes that maybe just this one relative has. And they would love the fact that the house does have this history of the round room, of that living room was apparently an inspiration for the rainbow room, and that Calder, the artist, first had his shows there. And that's the actual history of the place. That was, for us, it kind of made sense of the bones of, okay, I believe that this is one of the homes they have. And then within that, again, I took a lot of inspiration from this idea that, again, the money they have, and the idea that we meet them, and the causes that this idea that, Rebecca, she's a collector of, not only, I think, causes, people, wives, and art. And in that, I think there's something that can be really, when you start to look at homes of really serious collectors, I think there's something that really lends itself there, with a bit of the absurdity of, for most people, they might not understand why certain pieces are all placed in a certain way, like a gallery, or what they even mean. And I think a lot of that, those shapes and the way those things are positioned, was just kind of gonna hit the perfect tone for what that scene is, and a bit of, a lot of the humor, but also the absurdity of where they are, but also the believability of this family who has billions of dollars to give out. And so, yeah, we actually filled the home with a lot of amazing, unique pieces from a gallery that very kindly loaned some things to us, like that beautiful, the hilarious rug that our one actor gets rolled up in is this Haas Brothers rug, and Rebecca is sitting at the desk of this phenomenal designer, Wendell Castle, and then all of that actually, again, to then the dinner party, that was a very big scene, and the house itself was this location but wasn't really going to have the perfect dinner party scene. So it was I kind of pitched them on this idea of, well, what if we go underground, because of a bit of what Alice had already written with the game that they end up playing. And I think a bit also of, throughout the film, I feel like there's always series throughout the series, but it feels like a film. There's always this bit of, almost, I think that makes sense with Doctors. It's a bit of, what time is it? Which I think really the cinematography really captures well, because, they have insane hours. You never kind of know what time it is. And again, I think this going underground was really going to lend itself to that. And so I pitched them on this idea of this kind of wine cave, sort of, maybe it's very high-end bunker, but really, again, the dialogue that Alice had written of kind of what they're talking about and the absurdity of the meal, and very organic. It all made kind of sense that maybe, this space, that they could be surrounded by these natural elements, and then also production-wise allow the director and the DP to really, have control and shoot for the amount of time that we needed for such a lengthy scene.
Well, I want to congratulate you on all your work on the series. It really comes through on screen and really elevates the mood of the series. And thank you so much for talking with me about it today.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.